Well, hello everyone, and welcome in once again to our six screen Sunday programs. Now, on Sunday, generally you'll see we take a different position. We get into the theological teachings, we get into discussion of Scripture, and we talk about God. Now, don't head for the mountains when you hear that. There's many that leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they would like to know more about real Christianity. So stay with us, and we really appreciate your presence. But we got a program here coming up here next. Anne Marie, a former Jehovah's Witness out of California, she is the host of the program, and she's going to be coming on here next. And what we try to do every other Sunday is have Jehovah's Witnesses that have left the Watchtower tell us about their story while they were in the Watchtower and how they were treated and what life has become since they left. So I'm going to put up on the YouTube so you'll see it. I'm going to put up a banner so that you can see the telephone number. Let me do that right now when I'm thinking of it. And that way there, if you are thinking of coming on and you like to tell your story, we'd love to hear you. Now, this would be a great time to do it. I know it's extemporaneous for you. Maybe you didn't have it all planned ahead of time, but don't worry about that. We'll go nice and easy, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. So let's do that right now. And there it is. And okay, we got that one. And but we should have a telephone number too. Anne-Marie, there with us? Come on, Anne-Marie.
Right here, my brother.
All right, so I'm going to be getting this up. Go ahead, talk to the audience for a little bit.
Well, hello, audience. If this is your first time or not your first time, we welcome you all in this Six Screen Sunday to the show Jehovah's Witnesses Share Their Watchtower Story. This doesn't have to be about religion or about what to do or what you should believe. This is about you, time to share what you went through, how you came to be in the organization, and so on. Rick is putting up an invitation for anyone who wants to come on the show impromptu and just share their story. Today is Six Screen Sunday. I'm so happy. And today actually is February 11th, 2024. I made a mistake last night saying the wrong date. But anyway, I just want to welcome all of you in. This is a place where you can share freely. And if you feel like calling in, I'm sure Rick, our dear brother, is putting up on YouTube the phone number to call in, 1-727-731-6701, *6 to unmute yourself, and then *6 again to remute yourself when you're finished talking. Be sure that if you come on the line, if you have YouTube on or anything going on in the background of internet or TV or another phone conversation, please make sure that you shut all that down or go to a quiet place so that we can hear you clearly. No interference. Would anybody like to come on and say hello, share a thought, ask a question, tell a joke? This is your time. Anyone, *6? Well, as Rick said, we have had this happen before. An invitation extended to someone who says, yes, I would like to come on and share my Watchtower story. But it's not an easy thing. I know it's not for me. I've been out for 37 years, and I still have a real hard time sharing my story, what got me out, why I got out, how I was treated. It's very hard. I laugh a lot, I joke a lot, I'm generally a positive person. But when you have been through the Watchtower as a believer, as a faithful, absolutely obedient, loyal believer, and then however it happened, come to know that this organization was not and never was God's anything, not God's organization, not the only true religion, not the truth, and not the only way that you can possibly escape being destroyed at Armageddon. I remember when I was young, the organization used to refer to themselves, among other things, as the Ark of Salvation. Come into the Ark of Salvation before it's too late. Is that you, my brother? Want me to be quiet?
No, it just might have been my computer screen here. I do see some people calling in, though. I don't know if they want to speak up, but listen, if you want to tell your story, that story of yours in the Watchtower can be very therapeutic. We had a young man on here 2 weeks ago. He's only 20 years old, but he just left the Watchtower. And he loved after the program, I got word back that it really made him feel good coming on and telling his story. You get a feeling of, well, you get like a little adrenaline rush. You feel good because you say, man, I'm glad I got that off my chest. So if you're listening in today and you like to tell your story, you don't have to go on for a long, long time. Maybe just 5 or 10 minutes would be fine. But go ahead, come on. Don't be afraid. It's *6. Come on, tell us your story of how it was when you were in the Watchtower. Maybe you like the Watchtower. Maybe you're still in it. We'll even accommodate that if that's the case. So why don't you hit *6? Come on and say hello to us. It looks like we do have a 970. Is that 970? Come on. You're on with us, 970. Did you want to speak up? I guess not. Well, we'd had someone almost. Yes.
Rick, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, first-time caller, long-time listener. I just want to congratulate you and your team on doing such a wonderful job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Can I get your name?
Frank is my name, Rick, and I'm like you. I'm an old-timer. I was in the Watchtower for 50 years. I served as an elder for 10. I left in the year 2000. It was in the year 2000. So I've been out for 23 years.
Now, well, thank you. Where do you live, Frank?
I live in Hollywood, Florida, Rick.
Oh, I know where that is. Yeah, I know where that is. Yeah. Well, would you like to tell your story today a little bit, at least?
Well, my story goes back.
I'm gonna have Anne Marie. I'm gonna have Anne Marie kind of work with you, and she's great at interviewing. So, Anne Marie, why don't you come in and say hello to Frank?
Frank, we thank you so much. It's such a great show because this is where you just take your time. You were in 50 years. Oh my goodness. Go ahead, Frank. We are all listening.
Yeah, I was, Anne Marie. I was, I was born in. I left. I'm 70. I'll be 74 this year. So I relate with you, Rick, a little bit. I left in the year 1999, so that was almost 24 years ago. I left over the teaching of 607, which I researched at libraries across the United States for probably 10 years. And I finally flew to London, went to the Museum of Natural History where they have the Nabonidus Chronicle, and I flew in and went to the Babylonian exhibit, and it was closed that day. And so the lady at the information desk said, I told her why I was there, and she said, let me get the curator for the Babylonian exhibit. He gave me a private tour. When I was done with that, I knew that 607 was wrong. I mean, and after researching it for 10 years, it was confirmed. It was confirmed. I read a chapter in Ray Franz's book. I actually talked to Carl Olaf Johnson, writer of the Gentile Times. But once I knew that the Watchtower knew 607 was wrong and they lied about it, I was out of there. So that was 24 years ago. But I still like to listen to programs. I still like to listen to programs like the Six Screens because it's encouraging to hear everybody else's story.
Oh, isn't it? I'm so glad you brought up Olaf Johnson and 607. A lot of the younger witnesses, say the ones that are basically 40 and under, a lot of them don't understand what do you mean 607 and who's Olaf Johnson and what the heck. The Watchtower based their entire chronology, making Armageddon seem like it's coming next week, on Babylon being supposedly destroyed in 607 BC and CE, and then BC, sorry, and counting down forward. And when Carl Olaf Johnson was a pioneer, and he had a Bible study, and his Bible study said, one thing I just don't understand about your religion is that you guys, why do you teach that Babylon was destroyed in 607 BCE when all of the history books say it was destroyed in 587 or late 586? And he said, well, I'll do the research. Carl Olaf Johnson had never questioned the 607 BCE. So he did all the research, ended up doing incredible research, based on a lot of what you said, Brother Frank. The Babylonians kept very careful records, even star charts, everything to document what time of the year and when certain things happened. Business transactions, any event was all carefully written down and proven. And so he wrote the book. Well, first he went to the brothers, he went to the elders, the Watchtower people, and said, you know, I've done all this research and it turns out we're wrong. What do I do? And he was told, well, no, brother, we need to keep our mouth shut. We don't want to disrupt. We need to continue to have unity. And they made him promise he wouldn't tell anybody. He did promise, he kept his word, and he was disfellowshipped. Anyway,
yeah,
because
I'm familiar with his story. As a matter of fact, he wrote a white paper back to the governing body about his findings. That was the white paper that drove Fred Franz to go research it at Sachs with Professor Sachs at Brown University. But my journey on that, somebody planted that question with me at a door, and they asked me the same question: why do you guys teach 607? And I went to every library. I lived in Denver at the time, and I went to every library I could find. I looked up Jerusalem history and books written by Hebrew scholars, Hebrew rabbis, every Encyclopedia Britannica, Collier's, every source I could find said it was destroyed in 587. I could not find a single source in any library. And as I traveled around the country, I would just go to libraries on my time off and go research books there. I could never find a single source. And of course that caused me to doubt, but I was a very, you know, our family would go to unassigned territory for our vacations, you know, so I was pretty well indoctrinated. And so I just left it where, you know, I just leave it in Jehovah's hands. And then about 19, you know, it was right after Ray Franz wrote his book, you know, Crisis of Conscience. I got a hold of that, and he had a chapter in there about 607. That's the first time I started to realize that the governing body knew it was wrong. And then I got a hold of Carl Olaf Johnson's phone number, and I gave him a talk. I actually invited he and his wife to come to Florida and said I would give him an all-paid expense vacation to Florida. And he said, we don't travel much anymore, Frank, but he was able to confirm for me, you know, all of his findings. But the kicker for me was going to visit the Babylonian exhibit in the London Museum of Natural History. And the curator there said, there has never been a period of time more documented than the ancient Babylonian time period. He said, there's no way that Babylon destroyed Jerusalem in 607. That was it for me. That was like turning off the light switch, and I said, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. All of a sudden I went, wait a second, did I say Babel? I'm so dyslexic. Please forgive me, Frank. It was Jerusalem that was destroyed in 587?
Yes, I may have said, but yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
Jerusalem.
No, I said Babylon, and like so dyslexic, because I remember it was the Babylonian records that verified, and I'm so dyslexic, and it's getting worse, and I don't want to confuse anyone listening or later in the archives. Wow, Frank, thank you so much. Frank, since you were in the Watchtower a while, were you in the Watchtower during the time, let's say 1966 at the Divine Sons, what was the name of that district convention?
Yes, I was. The first convention I can remember was the 1958 New York Assembly.
Ooh,
I was 8 years old. Yeah, I was 8 years old at the time. I never missed a convention since then. So I was at all of those conventions up into the year 2000.
Okay, so that's wonderful.
I served as an elder during the 1975 period, and it just makes me sick when I hear people say, "Well, that's what some people thought, but we didn't actually teach that." If anybody's listening, you know, I was an elder during 75. All right, and all of the circuit overseers visits, they would come and remind us how many more months was left before 1975. It was a real teaching. It wasn't made up. So you know, if people ever wanted to question me and say, was that true? That was a teaching of the Watchtower. 1975 was going to be the end.
So you were, I assume, at the 1966 convention. The theme of the convention was God's Sons of Liberty. And I don't know if you were at this particular one, but I do remember the brother that stood up and was talking about all of the previous failed Armageddon dates. And I remember sitting there going, there were other dates? There were dates? I never heard of dates. All I ever heard was Armageddon's coming very soon. Armageddon's just around the corner. Time is so short, blah, blah, blah. And this guy was up there talking about previous Armageddon dates. And he said they had all failed because they had not been properly based upon Bible chronology. And he went on about how the faithful slave had come together in prayer and asked Jehovah to guide them through Holy Spirit, how they had dug into the scriptures, how they had dug through all the reference works in the Bethel Library because they didn't want to make another mistake. And then as he really flops it on, right, he says, and I can assure you, brothers, he was so emphatic. He said, I can assure you, brothers, that this time we've got it right. And I don't, in my memory, remember him actually saying 1975, but I believe he did because after he raised up the book, and in this book, this new publication, Life Everlasting and Freedom of the Sons of God, you will find in the first chapter a full 5-page Bible chronological chart proving that this time we've got it right. And I remember this was a huge, you know how packed the assemblies were back then, right, Frank? Packed.
I do remember. And I remember the release of that book. That was the talk of the assembly.
It was. And after the session,
I think that was the first book that everyone read before they left the assembly.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I still have my copy. And the brothers couldn't get fast enough to the kiosk to buy their own copies. And then groups were quickly forming to the side, looking up that Bible chronological chart. And there at the very bottom, 1975, end of the 6,000 years of mankind's existence. Basically,
I've got another memory that you probably remember, Anne Marie. Do you remember when 75 came and went? Then the excuses came. All right. Well, we don't know how long it was between Adam's creation and Eve's creation.
That was the first one.
Yeah. Do you remember those days of the excuses?
They said we could only count from when we know Adam was created, which I think was 4026 BCE is what they said. But we don't really know for sure how long it was between Adam's creation and Eve's creation. But I do remember them saying we may be off by a couple weeks. Maybe.
Yeah, a couple weeks, couple months turned into a couple of years.
Not years.
And until now, it was all made up. It was in the minds of the witnesses. You know, that's sickening to me.
It is sickening. And I had heard a rumor. You know, I remember things and I file them away and I never think about it until the opportunity comes up. And all of a sudden I went ding, ding, ding. I remember there was a rumor that in the early 60s, the brothers were starting to kind of get concerned because donations were way down. It's all about the money, money, money. So they decided to come up with a real good one, a real smackaroo. Because remember all of the other 1914, 1925, there was a rumor that Armageddon would come in 45, because I figured since they were off by 20 years with the destruction of Jerusalem, some people figured, well, maybe the reason why it didn't come in 25 is because they miscalculated based on them being wrong by 20 years of Jerusalem destruction. So there was a rumor, I don't believe it was ever in print, but there was a rumor going through the rank and file from what I heard that Armageddon was really likely to come in 45. So there were a lot of Armageddon scares, but when they presented the Armageddon prophecy for 1975 at that 1966 convention, after that and that release of that book, it was every day. all the talk was about Armageddon. Could you ever have a conversation before the 75 without Armageddon coming up in it, Frank?
No, and it was a topic of every circuit overseer's visit. Matter of fact, the Kingdom Halls where I went, we had a big thermometer on the wall, with the days counting down, and every year we color up the temperature a little higher to 1975. And the circuit overseer would come around and they would remind us, it's only another 14 months to 1975. It's only another 12 months. It's only another 6 months. It was a major, it was a major scare. But that whole thing, that whole episode of my life, Anne-Marie, I'm so happy that I got out 24 years ago. I actually became an atheist. I said, if the Watchtower doesn't have the truth, nobody has the truth. And then I got involved in the scientific writings of Stephen Meyer, who through science has proved intelligent design. Wonderful scientist. And so, so now I follow the Christian faith, but I even went through a bout of being an atheist for a while. So,
hey, do what you got to do.
It's been an interesting journey. That's all I can say.
Oh, I can understand that one. I absolutely can. But I just, for the sake of the archives and for the sake of any new listeners, I know that Watchtower has been telling the rank and file for the past at least 25 years that this whole 1975 thing was, just something that basically crazy witnesses went off on their own about. And their one video where it shows a young brother asking his grandfather how life was during that time. And he goes, well, I dedicated my life to Jehovah, not a date. They kind of water it down, and they never did.
If you remember that video, the one that you're talking about, he's asking his grandfather. He says, some people got excited about 1975, but I knew what the Bible said, that no one knew the day or the hour. Do you remember that?
I do, and what really irks my last nerve that particular scripture that they always refer to was not referring to Armageddon. That scripture was concerning the return of Jesus. When will you return? Nobody knows. Even I don't know. The Father only knows. Nobody knows a day or hour. And they always, as they always do, misapply scripture. Sorry, Frank, for interrupting.
No, I appreciate. Like I said, this is my first time calling in, but I listened to all of the 6 screen broadcasts and stuff. And I mainly wanted to call today because I finally got on early enough that it was live. And I said, I'm going to call in and just thank the whole team for all the efforts that they put into this.
Oh, what a sweetheart you are. Well, we thank you, Frank. So tell me, what was it like going through those days? I want to know, because everybody I talk to, most people don't have real clear memories of what it was like being in the Watchtower at the time, during the time of the 1975 Armageddon prophecy. How on high alert they kept us at every service meeting. They would start the service meeting with, well, brothers, only 87 months left before 1975. Well, just think, brothers, only so many. I mean, they never let it go. What will the 1970s bring? Remember that Watchtower? What will the 1970s bring? Why are you looking forward to 1975? And that's just what they said in print. What about all of the talks that were given? Like Brother Charles Sinitko. Oh, it's going to be too late for you. What's all this talk about 1975? Well, we don't have to ask what's that about 1975 if we read the Watchtower. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I remember those days well, and I was a firm believer, and I mean, I believe with all my heart. So even when 75 came and went, it was like, it never registered with me that it was another false prophecy. It didn't strike me until I did all the research. This was in the mid '80s about destruction of Jerusalem, and finally it was over for me in 1999. I said, this is a cult. You know, they don't tell the truth. But my life wasn't bad. I had a lot of good friends. You know, a lot of good friends, a lot of good memories.
So you had good friends in the Watchtower? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. I had a lot of good friends in the Watchtower, and we all just hung out together. We accepted the reality as reality. I'm about the only one that really left. I think I've got 4 children I haven't talked to, and I wouldn't say I've talked to one of them. I've got 3 children I haven't talked to in 22 years.
Oh, honey. Oh no.
So well, I relate with is it Joe and Fran?
Yeah.
I relate with them because they have the same. They raised their kids. Our family vacations were going down assigned territory. That's what we did for family vacations.
This Watchtower took so much normalcy out of our lives and out of our family lives, out of our children's lives. You didn't go camping? No, we went to the territory.
Yeah, that's what we did. But you know what? I have no complaints. It was a learning experience. You know, I don't really have any regrets. I didn't go to college because of, I think it was around 1968 they came out with an article that you'll never be able to go to college and graduate and get a career before the end comes.
If anyone wants to look up the article that Frank is referring to, you can go to JW Facts. I don't know if it's .com or .org. JW Facts. Look up the 1969.
It's .com.
It is .com, Frank. Thank you. It is
wonderful website.
Yes, it is. The magazine that Frank is recurring to with that article about young people won't have time to go to college or have a career was May 22nd Awake, 1969. It's there. They still have it on that site. You might have to scroll all the way down to hit that particular article, but I still remember it. Go ahead, Frank. I just wanted to make sure people could look it up.
I guess getting a few things right validates my story, doesn't it, Henry?
Absolutely, Frank. I don't get to talk to too many people who were there during those days. Not at all. And I was wondering if you remember Brother Sanutko's talk in 1967, just 1 year after we had the 1975 Armageddon prophecy shoved at us, and after an entire year of hearing Armageddon, not much time left, oh, we better get our affairs in order, because the rumor was going around, at least in 1970, which was, of course, 4 years later, the rumor was going around that the governing body and the faithful slave did not really believe that the world would even last until 1975. They thought Armageddon would come sooner, which of course further had everybody scared. But anyway, a year after 1966 announcement of the 1975 Armageddon prophecy, there was a huge talk, and I do remember Circuit Overseer Charles
Sanutko. Stay alive until 75.
Was that the name of the talk? I don't remember.
I remember a quote from that talk. It was "Stay alive till 75." That was.
Oh, no doubt. Remember, it'll do till 72.
No, I don't remember that one.
I remember that one. But anyway, so after a solid year of hearing, Armageddon, and at the meetings, I'll never forget, used to be saying, it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. I mean, it was just fear pounded in at every meeting, all the Watchtower studies. And then Sanutko gets up there and talks about, now we as runners ready to get to the finish line. And, like Armageddon's coming next Thursday. It was just so bad. And I think it's still there. I don't know if it's still on YouTube or what. I know it is. I just don't know what it's under. I should get on there and try to post it on comments. But you remember all that. You remember the excuses started when Armageddon didn't come. The excuses started was with Well, we don't really know how much time there was between Adam's creation and Eve's creation. So technically, the last part of the 6,000 years couldn't start until after Eve was created. Well, that held us for a while. And then they had other excuses. I don't remember. Do you remember?
No, they use that excuse for, it used to be, well, it could have been a couple of weeks, could have been a couple of months. They kept stretching out that the date between Adam and Eve. Well, Adam had to name all the animals. That could have taken a couple of years. So they stretched out as far as they could, and then it just kind of faded into the background. It wasn't talked about. I know through the 80s it wasn't a big thing, and then I think sometime during the 80s they changed the definition of what a generation was. And that's when it went to a wicked generation, if you remember that.
Oh, brother. Well, I was just thinking back of the excuses they made, and I appreciate that. But then later, after about a year, after 1975, I think it was in 76, maybe early 77, I don't remember, but I remember they called a special assembly, and we all had to go to the assembly hall. It was at night. And it was a special assembly to address the murmuring. And we were all crowded into that assembly hall. It was like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And Brother Fred Franz, president of the Watchtower Society at that time, he comes up on the stage, and we had all been whispering, wonder what this is about. What excuse are they going to come up with now? We all were murmuring because what the heck? We'd had this beat into our heads for years, and now all of a sudden it's nothing but excuses. So here comes Brother Fred. Did you ever get a chance to meet Brother Freddie Franz?
Actually, yes, I did.
Talk to me about it.
As a matter of fact, I got to meet face to face and talk to him a little bit with Nathan Noor.
Oh, I never met Nathan Noor.
Yeah, his wife was from Colorado, and they came out and dedicated a hall in Colorado. I
want to know. Okay, I don't care. I just want to know about Fred Franz, what you saw, because I met him face to face as well.
I thought he was.
Tell me.
I thought he was a brilliant guy. Now, when I met him, he was just about blind, just about totally blind,
Aww.
if not totally blind. But he could quote so many scriptures from memory. I was just really impressed with that. But my encounter with Fred Franz was a brief. It was just like a bunch of people standing in line and going up to say hello to him.
Oh, well, I think you met him way later after I did. I met him around 81, 82, and he was a spitfire. He was absolutely like he was on crack 24/7. He was very animated, very forceful. He's just a little guy, little bony faced guy.
Yeah, he was a little dinky guy. He was not very big at all.
I remember his eyes. Now, you said he was going blind. When I met him, he was perfectly sighted, but his eyes were like darts, especially if he was angry. And what I wanted to say is that when he got up on that stage at that special assembly to address the murmuring, he got up there and the look on his face, everybody just stopped talking. And all he did was walk up to the podium and glare at everybody. And we all started slinking down in our seats. And he hadn't even opened up his mouth. And then he started talking about...
Curious, Anne-Marie, where was that? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to that special assembly at? What part of the country?
That was in California at the Fremont Assembly Hall off of Osgood.
So I lived in San Diego for a while. So Fremont, that was up closer to San Francisco, wasn't it?
I do believe so. Yeah, I think it's closer to the Bay Area, Fremont. But anyway, if I could continue, this Brother Franz gets up. He's glaring at everybody in the audience. Then he started talking about what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness. And he wasn't being smooth and soft and gentle like most speakers are from Watchtower. He was talking about being warriors and about being faithful and about not questioning the general or the general's men, why are we serving Jehovah? Are we serving Jehovah out of love and loyalty? Or are we serving Jehovah for what we think we can get out of him? Are we selfish? Are we criticizing Jehovah? And he just went on and on and on. And we were slinking down in our seats. And then he waited and he glared some more at us. And then all of a sudden he's yelling. And he said, do you know why Armageddon didn't come? And he waits half a beat and he goes, because you wanted it to come. Who do you think you are? Jehovah doesn't work according to your time schedule. And he just went on and on. How do you know Jehovah wasn't showing mercy by holding back the winds of Armageddon? How do you know that there aren't kind-hearted, good-hearted people out there who still haven't heard the good news? How do you know he wasn't showing mercy to you? Who of you right now sitting there in front of me in your seats can honestly say that if Armageddon had come, would you be here? I mean, he just made us feel like dirt. Anyway, I just had to throw that in.
No, that sounds just like him. I mean, you did a good job there, Anne Marie.
That's because you scared the holy bejesus out of me. and I actually got to meet him face to face. We were in a small room with a few other brothers and sisters, and he was really nice, but he was just so almost scary, almost seemed like he was just a little bit crazy, but you're right, extremely quick-minded, very intelligent, and he was an amazing guy, but he scared me, and it drives me nuts when people say it didn't happen. My own Jehovah's Witness son told me that I made the whole thing out. It was a lie.
You've got a witness now, Anne Marie, so you can call me anytime to talk to your son and say, no, your mom's telling the truth.
You're cute. And then later, the last thing I remember about referring to 1975 and an excuse why it didn't happen, I found it on YouTube on some post. It was like 20 years ago I found it. It was all about this talk given by a circuit overseer, and it was all about the test. It was all a test. He went on and on. Almost every single sentence that came out of this brother's mouth was test. It was a test. How do you know it wasn't a test? How did you fail the test? Did you pass the test? On and on and on about basically the whole thing was a test. How did you pass the test? What grade did you get on the test? I'm telling you, these people just come out of left field, never admit that they made the whole thing up, much less ever admit that they were wrong, much less say they were sorry. They make excuses, and then when enough people leave out of disgust or they die, then they tell the younger ones who are too young to know what happened, oh, it was just, some disgruntled, crazy Jehovah's Witnesses over there. Don't pay attention to those crazy stories.
Yep. Well, you got it right. I tell you what, though, I'll say this, Anne Marie, that the older members of the governing body, Fred Franz, Nathan Knorr, they at least had some credibility about it. But the current body of Jehovah's Witnesses is like, what a bunch of clowns. I mean, let is embarrassing, explain is embarrassing. I mean, they have no ounce of credibility. I don't know how the current witnesses put up with it, but that's just me. And I probably sound bitter. I'm not bitter. I had a good life, and I enjoy being part of this community. Listen, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and give other people a chance to sign in. But thank you for sharing with me, Anne Marie. I appreciate that.
Well, Frank, I can't thank you enough for coming on. As I said, I rarely get to talk to anybody who actually remembers what I remember.
Well, I'm one of them. been there and done that,
Bought the T-shirt, gave it to Goodwill.
Yep, that's it. So thank you, honey.
I love it.
And Rick, if you're still there, thank you for all your hard work, buddy. I appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome, Frank. No, I'm here. I'm listening. My goodness gracious, it's good to have you come on. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it, Frank. Now, you don't be a stranger. You come back and see us again, okay?
Yeah, I usually listen to your broadcast after, hours after they're done. Very seldom do I get on in the afternoon. But I said, if I ever am able to dial in, I'm going to let Rick and his team know that you've got a long-term listener and a first-time caller.
Well,
and I appreciate it.
Well, you made my day. Thank you. That makes me feel happy. I really appreciate that. Well, you be good now and keep waving that flag of victory.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you. If there's anyone who would like to chime in, maybe comment on the fascinating story that Frank had, his memory goes far back, and a lot of people are not really aware of this history of Watchtower. Anybody would like to comment?
Well, I just want to say, this is Rick, Emery. I just want to say that was kind of neat, wasn't it? Kind of an extemporaneous, on-the-spot interview. I think that's kind of neat. Wouldn't it be great if we could get someone else to come in? Is there anybody out there listening to this program? Now, you all had your trek in the Watchtower. It's therapeutic to get it off your chest. Well, let us know. How long were you in? Well, what got you out? How'd you get in the first place? Things like that we'd love to hear. So don't be a stranger and don't be bashful. This isn't CBS News. We don't have 1 million people in here listening. We're just a small little group discussing things together here today. So why don't you try to come in? Go ahead, hit *6. Come on in. Tell us your little trek in the Watchtower. I see there's a number of people on a telephone line. We got people listening in on a number of platforms. So if you see the number there, well, wouldn't you like to tell us? We all have a story to tell. Maybe you love the Watchtower. Maybe you say, no, I don't want to really say anything. Even if you love the Watchtower, we'd love to hear what you loved about it. Really. We have a good time here on Saturday night. We have people call in from all over the world, and they tell their stories. We had a man on last night, Jason Zelda. Wow. He wrote a book, a 500-page book on the Watchtower. And he was on with us last night. So he had a lot to say. He never was even a witness. But I'm sure you have so much to say. You've been affected, I'm sure. Very few of us have come out of the Watchtower unscathed. There's always some collateral damage, you could say. In my case, I've got a daughter and a son-in-law that won't speak to me. My mother went to her grave without speaking to me. I'm glad to say that I do have many relatives right now that are leaving the Watchtower. Now that I thank God for that. I'm very happy to see that, because really, when you stop and think about it, that's a blessing. And maybe you're saying to yourself today, boy, I wish I had my relatives and friends. I wish they would leave. Well, don't you worry. They will be. The Watchtower is hemorrhaging. And what are you going to say? What are you going to say to your relatives and friends who didn't speak to you for 20 years? That's going to be a hard one, right? What do you think, Anne-Marie?
I think you're right on the money as always, Rick. And every time I think about you being in the Watchtower, all I can see is you struggling in the heat, pushing the baby carriage with your first baby. I think you were, 21 years old, attending the 1969, oh my God, Peace on Earth Assembly.
Yeah, it was the Peace on Earth Assembly. I was 20 years old. It was, I'll tell you what. Hey, I heard something today I'll share with you. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question. What, in fact, this was on TV this morning. I saw it. What year, how old do you have to be the happiest in your life? Take a shot at it. When are people the happiest in their life? At what age?
I don't know. I'd say about 3, 4, 5.
When you're a kid? Boy, you really go back. I was surprised to learn this. The happiest a person is when they're in their 60s.
Is that a fact?
That's a fact. You can look it up online. And I was thinking, I thought, because I'm really right now, I'm 75. In fact, I'm a little older than Frank that just called in. But I'm 75, but this is the happiest I've ever been. Yes. And what do you attribute it to? Anne-Marie, I attribute it to wisdom. I think it's amazing. The Bible speaks about wisdom. The Bible speaks a lot about wisdom. And, you can sit back here. Things don't worry me as much as they did when I was in my 20s and in the Watchtower. It was brutal. Trying to get to the convention, like you said, lugging the baby carriage, getting to the meetings. They weren't happy days for me. It was a chore being a witness. But I have to tell you, I'm the happiest right now at 75 years old I've ever been. You would think that as you get older, you'd be more unhappy because there's a lot of grumpy old people, right? But this is the best I feel. But in the 60s, you feel your happiest? I do believe we do have another caller. I believe we have Michigan coming in. Did you want to come in, Michigan? I think that's you, Mike.
Oh, yeah, just a real quick comment. I don't want to get too controversial, but I was just going to bring out my opinion, at least. Jerusalem was destroyed in 606. Brother Russell said so, and also we go back. Remember, Rick, the decree that they were allowed to return to Babylon. They left Babylon, were able to return back to Jerusalem within 536. If we add, so we're kind of counting backwards. It's before Christ, BC, before Christ. So we count back 70 years. We had 70 to 536. We come up to 606. I rest my case.
Well, I've heard that explanation before. Go ahead, Emery.
Oh, well, you know how I found out when Jerusalem was destroyed? I forgot that I had an old set of encyclopedias that my mom bought before I was born, and I went to my bookcase, pulled out the number W encyclopedia, looked up world history, and there was a whole chart of all the significant dates in history, and there was no 607 or 606 or whatever, but it did say that Jerusalem was destroyed in 587. The Watchtower cannot call the Britannica Encyclopedia an apostate book. I don't care what Watchtower got. If it's not backed up by facts, by historical facts or scientific facts, I say they're full of it, and I need a bigger shovel.
You're right. I know if you look it up, I've looked this up myself. I know all encyclopedias just say Jerusalem was destroyed in 587, but the 536 date, though, is an established date. That's when they were able to return to the land. And as my point was, if you add 70 to 536, you do come to 606.
Okay,
So
I have to. You
can't deny the 536 date is correct. That's when they were able to return from the land, and the Bible is clear: 70 years of desolation.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
We gotta give Mike credit, though, Anne-Marie. We gotta give him credit. He's good at some of this stuff. He does his homework. I'm not quite sure. I mean, he can believe that. I mean, there are a lot of people that believe that explanation he just gave, but not everybody. The jury's still out for so many. But the thing is, Anne-Marie, we have to give Mike credit. He comes in here. He's really smarter than we might be giving him credit for. I've told him many times as he comes on, he really knows the history of the Watchtower. I believe as good as anybody that's come on this program. He's very good at it. And, he still, at least, he still follows the Bible. Well, he follows the Bible students. He still follows that. But, they're kind of an offshoot of the witnesses. So he kind of follows even Pastor Russell. But it's kind of odd being a young man like that. I would have thought he would have got as far away from that movement as he possibly could. But he's hungry.
I'm not that young, Rick. Rick, I'm getting old. I'm 43, so I'm getting old.
Well, just saying, another 20 years, you'll be the happiest in your life.
I don't know about that one, Rick. I'll kind of question that. No, but you know what? You're sort of right. I think my dad, I talked to him about things. He probably thinks I'm crazy too, but I sometimes feel like, I'm kind of out in left field because you say, like, I won't go to a church, because of what my things I believe, but I don't know. I'm kind of odd, I guess. But the Watchtower, the reason I don't believe in the Watchtower is odd. I lost faith in the Watchtower because of reading Watchtower literature. So I find I find it all kind of, that's the problem with it. If it's true, I always look at things as being black and white. If either something is true or it's not. Well, how can it be, if that makes any sense? I mean, you go back, well, like the claim that they were chosen. Okay, they were chosen by God in 1919. Okay, I had an elder, well, it might have been two elders one time. This was years ago. And I brought this up. I said, well, they claim they're chosen in 1919. I said, well, how can God? So it said, Watchtower says God and Jesus. They searched, and they had to find these people and appoint them as a faithful and wise servant. And I just asked them a simple question. I said, well, was Brother Russell and Brother Rutherford and all these people associated with the Bible students or the Watchtower Bible Tract Society before 1919 that were alive, were they anointed by God's Holy Spirit? And he said, yes. I said, well, if that's true, then why did he have to come to earth and search for 3.5 years to find them if they were already anointed by the Holy Spirit? And he told me, well, we don't want to speculate. Well, I mean, that's just common sense. Well, you're chosen if you either you're, come on. I can smell BS when I see it. I mean, when I smell it.
Well, like we always say here, how do you make sense out of nonsense? Seriously. And I'm glad that you admitted that. That got a lot of people out of the so-called Watchtower is their literature. Their literature indicts them. That's why, that's one of the reasons why they're not publishing too much anymore physical books. Everything is digital, as you know, and they can change that.
Right.
But these old books are indicting them,
Well, literature. Well, another one is I always like, this is the one that always got me. How many times did you ever hear, Rick, about Brother Rutherford's speech in Cedar Point? They always key. He said, advertise, advertise, advertise the king and the kingdom. Okay, well, that's the only thing they focus on. We'll go back, find the original Watchtower. What's that, 1921, 1922? Okay. Go back and read there. And about everything he said up to that point, according to current understanding, is bullshit. He talks about, because he says, I'm serious, he says right before he says those words, advertise, advertise the kingdom, he's talking about 1874. He says, and he goes on, you have to read it all. I can't.
Oh, no, I know. It's not. Listen, one of the most difficult jobs there is to paraphrase the studies in the scripture books. Jeez.
Right. But he's saying in that talk, Rick, he says, do you believe there's a faithful and wise servant? And he was providing me, so he's talking about Brother Russell, but he gets on, do you believe that the Lord is in his presence? And he has been since 1874. Then he says, go forward, you sons of the Most High. I mean, right before he gives the magical words. So I feel like, well, kind of like you're not telling the whole story. See, they dumped the 1874 date, I don't know, probably in the 30s, I guess. I guess they just did that to make things more easy to understand. But if 1874 is wrong, then it seems to me like it's a house of cards and the whole thing falls flat.
Well, the whole thing is falling flat. Let's just even take... let's take 1914, for example. I mean, that is the central doctrine of the Jehovah's Witnesses. That everything the Watchtower was taught is based on 1914, at least the modern day witness, so to speak. And
right, but that's also told Rick to look up pyramidology. That's also pinpointed by the pyramids. You can look it up in encyclopedia.
Oh yeah, no, I know it. But see, you don't hear much about it today, and it's been thoughts. We even brought it up here. I don't know for sure, so don't take it to the bank and cash it. But they got to get rid of that somehow. But how can they do it? Well,
let's quit talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, they got rid. Well, you know what? See, Rick. The point of it is, it's like this, is I think ultimately, I think people today aren't very smart, a lot of people, but also, you say, well, you can't get rid of 1914. Well, look at it like this. Somebody could have said back in those days, well, how are you going to get rid of 1874 or 1878? Well, they did it. They got rid of it. They just centered everything around 1914. So I would say, I see your point, but you're looking at it from your standpoint. You got a new generation of people coming up. It doesn't have the same meaning to them as it does to you.
Oh, no, that's a wonderful way to put it. In fact, I believe that's even happening in our very government. I really do believe it. A lot of the people aren't accepting what they see going on in Washington, but a lot of the new ones, newer generation, they haven't been around long enough to even see what normal good conditions were like. And now they're kind of just accepting what's taking place. And I mean, this country is, I'm not going to get too political here, but it's very similar, right? I draw similarities between the Watchtower and even the government. They can pull a wool over your eyes.
I saw this on the news, Rick. I think it was just the other day. imagine this. It's on the bottom of the screen, it's probably on a right-wing station, I guess. But anyway, it said on the bottom, it said there's an epidemic in the country today of young men simply refusing or not wanting to work. Now, imagine yourself, Rick, in your generation. Could you have imagined yourself getting out of high school, whatever, young, not wanting to have a job? I mean, well, don't you want some money at least? I mean, nobody really loves work, but you kind of have to work.
Well, the thing is, though, Mike, and you fall into this category too. You got to get out there and hustle. And back then, a lot of the men don't want to work today because they can collect money from the state or from the federal government. I mean, if they rightfully deserve it, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people,
Right.
I mean, they don't have to. They just get a check in the mail. But there wasn't all of those programs when I was a young guy raising children. And when it came
Right.
time to buy Pampers, I didn't go to the school and here's my cash card. You had to buy them. Yeah, you had to buy that
Right.
stuff.
Well, yeah.
Different world.
I can get money from the state. Like I can get unemployment sometimes, but I have to at least work for a while to get it. I mean, I can't. I can't get disability without being disabled. But yeah,
Yeah, well,
they do it somehow.
Well, those that are disabled, that really rightfully so. I'm glad the government can watch over and help them. But there's a lot of people on the dole that shouldn't be there, Mike. You know it, and I know it. Hey, listen, we got to get rolling here. But thank you, Mike, for calling in. Thank you very much. Always good to hear from you. Anne Marie, what do you have to say?
Well, I say that was a very interesting conversation. And it's like you said, how are they going to get rid of 1914? They get rid of it like they do everything else. They just stop talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you hope it goes away. It seems to work for the big entities of life. Just stop talking about it and it goes away. Or if you want to tell a lie, as you always said, Anne Marie, too, just keep telling it and people will believe it.
Hey, I learned that straight from Hitler himself.
You got it. That's right.
Tell a big lie.
I remember you
Tell it
brought.
often enough, they'll believe it.
I believe. Well, listen, you did good today. It was good to get Frank to come in. We got Mike to come in. Hey, we're making some progress.
Yeah. Every Sixth Green Sunday and Saturday is a good Sixth Green Sunday and Saturday. It's always a blessing, Rick, and I thank you so much for your venue and the opportunity to be part of the Sixth Green family.
Well, thank you. Now, next time we come on with this program, Jason Zelda's coming on. Yeah, Jason, he's coming on. He wanted to get last night. He was on our news program last night, but I told him to stay off the Bible subjects. So he did. And he just talked about a lot of the scandals and deceit in the Watchtower, and the stocks and all of that stuff they own. But I said, now, if you want to tell you a Christian story and use scriptures and tell us why the Watchtower is wrong theologically. So he's looking forward. He's coming on in 2 weeks from today. So let's get ready for Jason. It's going to be a good program.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow. I get to talk to Jason Zelda?
Well, yeah, Jason. I told him he's a rock star. A lot of people, he never was. He never was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But man, that guy. I'm going to tell you. I told him last night. I said, Jason, you missed your calling. I said you could have been a great prosecuting attorney. I mean that. He lays a great foundation, then he explains it. I says, man, you missed your calling. You could have been a very popular lawyer. I'm serious. And he laughed a little bit, but I mean that. He's a smart man. There's no question about it.
Well, I've learned so much from him. And when I heard, I would encourage anyone listening to this, if you look up Jason Zelda with a Z, as in zebra, Jason Zelda, look up under all of his postings and look for the smoking gun, hidden from Jehovah's Witnesses, the smoking gun. When I found out that Watchtower had not only been part of the United Nations and lied about it, and then when they knew, everybody knew they had lied about it, and then they said, well, we just needed to get a library card. I mean, they lie, and then when they get caught, they make up more lies. But when he brought up that they had massive shareholdings, not just a few hundred, but a few thousands of shares in several companies that we, as Jehovah's Witnesses, would never be allowed to have shares in. Bombers, Boeing that makes bombers and bombs, cigarette companies, medical supply companies, war companies, they anything they could make money off of, they were invested in it. And he provided the proof. Look under hidden from Jehovah's Witnesses, the smoking gun, and it was all there. It's in their tax returns.
That was an excellent video. And so next week, next time, not next week, but 2 weeks from today, you'll be on with us. Anne Marie, don't you ever change. You got a good way about you. You connecting with your audience here. You just keep up the good work, and we'll see you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, my brother, and thank you for everything you do. And God bless you and Susan. Have a great Six Screen Sunday.
Thank you. You too. Well, that was Anne Marie, and that was the program today. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses share their trek in the Watchtower, as we say. Now, don't go anywhere. We have our JW World News Sunday edition. That's coming up next. And then we go to the Christian Court. Have you listened to that program, the Christian Court? What a dynamite program. I'm not saying because I'm on that program, but I'm saying because we got two scholars on that program that really impressed me, Scott Walton and Jay Hess, and they're coming on today. Now, what we do in the Christian Court is, in the world of Christianity, there's a lot of peculiar questions asked. Now, they're not salvation points. They're not going to keep you out of the kingdom, but, people just want an answer. Now, today we're going to be talking about, well, I'll tell you, not the Watchtower, but the Bible, it speaks about slavery. And so I want to know, in the Christian Court, how is it that the Bible can speak about slavery? Was it different than the slavery that we're kind of seeing bad events take place in the past? Well, we'll be on today talking about slavery in the Bible. Also, another thing, do you know what your spiritual gift is? That's something that I've talked to numerous people who are Christians, and they said, I don't know what my spiritual gift is, but the book of Romans tells us that if you're a Christian, you have a spiritual gift. So, deep down, I think all of us know where we excel, right? I think all of us excel in something, and God can see that. So God gives us a gift, and we're going to be talking about that today in the court. Do you have to have it? Should you know what your spiritual gift is? That's going to be taken up on the court today, the Christian Court, at 4:00. So we're looking forward to that. So we're going to leave this program, and then we're going to go to our JW World News Sunday edition. That's next. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.